Without a doubt, The Twilight Zone is one of the most influential TV shows created in history. The show had everything: drama, romance, suspense, and twists, all thanks to the brilliant mind of writer and creator Rod Serling. The original series ran for about 5 years. It was then brought back in 1985 for another 4 years with a different narrator. And finally, it was brought back recently with Jordan Peele filling Serling's shoes. I haven't seen enough episodes of the later two series to give my thoughts, but what I do know is that Rod Serling created some of the most brilliant episodes ever put on TV, and I simply want to be a guide to newer viewers who have no idea where to start. And that's why today we're going to be looking at my personal top 12 episodes from season 1. There is one thing I want to say that can be a big pet peeve of mine, but just because it's black and white, it doesn't mean it's boring. I feel like there's a negative connotation with black and white media simply because of the lack of color, and that's simply not true. I will admit, some of it is very boring, but there's also modern movies that have really slow pacing. If you're one of those people who think that colorless media is boring, then I recommend watching The Wolfman, The Invisible Man, and Night of the Living Dead. Those are great ones to start off with. I know there's more films out there, but honestly, I can't think of many of them in the moment, so there you go. With that said, let's move on. I've got to say, putting this list together was very difficult. I based this on how each episode made me feel by the end credits. Some of them end and give me goosebumps, while others don't give me that strong of a reaction. So, here we go. Welcome to my top 12 Season 1 Twilight Zone episodes. Number 12, A World of His Own. This is one of those episodes that prove that you can tell a very compelling story with very little money and in one location. A World of His Own stars a playwright who has the ability to bring anything he wants to life by simply describing said thing to a tape recorder. In only 25 minutes, writer Richard Matheson is able to take you on a small emotional roller coaster. While the ending is a bit predictable, it'll still leave you with the oddest feeling. And if I'm not mistaken, this is also the very first episode where you see Rod Serling on screen as a narrator. And all I will say with that is that I wasn't expecting what happened here, but definitely won't spoil that. Number 11, Third from the Sun. For some reason, this one reminds me of 10 Cloverfield Lane, when they don't really have much in common. In this episode, we have two families trying to escape an upcoming atomic war. The reason why I like this one so much was because throughout the entire episode, you feel a strong sense of dread. It truly feels like you're with this family trying to quickly pack and find a way out. It also has a post-World War II message that reminds us about the dangers of nuclear wars, which still holds up in today's age. Number 10, The Lonely. A recurring theme in the Twilight Zone is how humans react in isolation, and this is one of the first episodes to do that. This stars a convicted man named James Corey who is punished by being left alone with only a female robot for companionship. This does a great job at showing the dangers of AI and how it can really get to your head. It reminded me of the film Ex Machina. Not saying it has the same plot points, but same themes with robots and humans and all that stuff. Number 9, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. This is the very first episode I ever saw. It was in my 7th grade class, and for some reason they had the teleplay on our English textbook, and they made each student read for a character. I chose whichever character had the least lines because I was pretty shy. The following class, they brought up those big TVs and a dolly thing, and I got to witness the brilliance of Rod Serling, while my classmates kept making noise and being distracting because they didn't like the fact that there wasn't any color. Either way, this is a classic episode. It felt wrong not adding it to the list. The episode shows how an average suburban neighborhood handles a simple power failure. This is one of those episodes that while watching it, I kept thinking, there's no way Serling didn't write this. And guess what? He did. This one doesn't rely on anything supernatural or weird or anything to tell the story. It looks at humans as if they were guinea pigs in an experiment to show how we as a society can quickly go from being nice and trustworthy to turning against our close friends simply out of paranoia. If you've never seen this, then this is a great one to start off with. But I might just be saying that because this episode is what introduced a lot of people to the show. At least people my age. Number 8, I Shot an Arrow into the Air. What happens when a group of astronauts are stranded in an unknown planet? Find out in this episode. I consider this episode a great example of how the script is the most important part of any production. Not the equipment or the editing software, but the story. This entire thing takes place in a desert basically, but it tells such a powerful story that can show the greed of man and what one is willing to do to survive. I don't want to say much for those who haven't seen it, but I've got to say, the ending is so simple and in a way very obvious that I didn't see it coming. Number 7. And when the sky was opened. I have to be careful about what I say with this one simply because I feel like the less you know, the better. All I'll say is that it has 3 astronauts return home after their spaceship crashed, and now they're trying to remember what happened. Go watch this one because in some weird way, this is the one that freaked me out the most. Don't expect any horror aspects, but just go watch it. You might know what I mean once you finish it. Number 6. Long Live Walter Jameson. A history teacher by the name of Walter Jameson is revealed to have been alive for longer than any human. Once again, this all mostly takes place in one house, and it just works out so well. There's some great dialogue in this one, and it really makes you question, does immortality really sound appealing to people? Being alive and then seeing loved ones die? Not fun. Number 5. The Purple Testament. Do you all remember the Goosebumps episode, Say Cheese or Die? Well, this one sort of reminds me of that. It's about a lieutenant in World War II who has the gift, or curse, of seeing who will die next. I knew this had to be one of my favorite episodes of the season the second it ended. This one had completely hooked the entire time. It even inspired me to write a crappy first draft for a short film. I feel like there's so much you can do with this, and it makes me wonder if the writers of Final Destination were also inspired by this episode. Number 4. People are alike all over. 2 astronauts are on their way to Mars. One of them is the positive guy who thinks that people are alike all over, and one of them believes that people are a lot more selfish than many people believe to think. I will say that after watching this, it's so obvious Rod Serling wrote the sci-fi classic Planet of the Apes. This episode even stars Roddy McDowall, who plays Cornelius in the film. Number 3. The Hitchhiker. I think it's safe to say that this is the creepiest episode from the season. The Hitchhiker has a young woman in a cross-country road trip who keeps seeing the same hitchhiker everywhere she goes. This episode has an eerie and almost dreamlike feel. I would even say that while watching this, it truly felt like I was stuck in a nightmare. Without spoiling anything, I will say that the end narration by Rod Serling is probably the shortest narration of the season, but it sends chills down my spine every single time. Number 2. Walking Distance. Even though I put this in number 2, I wouldn't be surprised if I bump this one up to number 1 in a few decades from now. Walking Distance has a 36-year-old man who stops to get his car fixed at a gas station. While he waits, he takes a walk to his hometown, only to find out that he's traveled back in time to witness himself as a young kid again. Even though I'm young, I still get sentimental watching this. It reminds us that as hard as it can be to let go of the past, you have to move on and simply keep looking forward to the future. As someone who's very nostalgic about things, this one always hits home for me. Also, Ron Howard is in this, so how could this not be number 2? And now for my number 1 favorite Season 1 Twilight Zone episode, Time Enough at Last. How in the world could I not make this my number 1? This is truly one of the greatest short stories ever told and is a fan favorite for obvious reasons, one of them being Burgess Meredith. Even if you've never seen this episode, I'm sure you've seen references to it somewhere in pop culture. It stars a bookworm who is left with an entire planet to himself. I know I keep saying this, but I won't say anymore because if you don't know what happens here, then you have a gift. Not knowing how this ends is almost like saying that you didn't know Vader was Luke's father. I recommend just turning this off and go to either Hulu, Prime, or Netflix and watch the episode there. It's just so good. Honestly, I'd consider this one of the best episodes in the entire series. But don't forget, I said one of the best. And that concludes today's Top 12. As an avid fan of this show, I plan on making a top 12 for every season, and I might dive into the 80s version and the 2019 version, but we'll see what the future holds for us. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing. One of my life goals is to keep old shows like these alive, and not let newer generations forget about the impact they've had in our history. So thank you for watching the video the whole way through. I'll see you all in the next video, but in the meantime, be careful not to cross over into the Twilight Zone.